Hello, my name is Nadia, and today I'm going to be talking about knitting for the summer. I live in Kildare in Ireland. We don't get a massive summer here, but I do enjoy knitting some things for summer occasionally. So today as I'm speaking, it is a bit late to be talking about summer patterns, given that we're pretty much heading into autumn. It is, as we speak, July 18th. And so I'd say we have maybe a month and a half of summer left here in Ireland. But if you know anything about the Irish summer, it hasn't started yet. We have had a pretty miserable and rainy spring leading into the beginning of summer that has really not let up at all. So I am still holding all of my plans for the summer until now. I just wanted to take you through them today. I also have a cheat in that I will be driving down to France with my partner and my two dogs at the end of the summer, so September 15th onwards. We're hoping that it will be still quite hot there when we're down there. So I'm looking forward to knitting some of those patterns on the drive down and generally whilst I'm there. And I'm also looking forward to sort of extending my summer a bit further and getting a chance to knit some more summery things. So before we get into it, I am actually already wearing a summer piece that I knitted last year. So this is the Aura top by Rose Knitwear. And I knitted this in a strand of a kid silk lace. This is, I think, the Debbie Bliss Angel in, I want to say, the color moss. But it can be knit in basically any yarn or any lace weight. It's knit up on 6mm needles. And I really like this pattern for the summer, especially in Ireland, because it keeps you warm, but still feels sort of nice and airy and lightweight. Now, to get into some patterns that I'm looking forward to knitting this summer, one of them is actually a work in progress that I never finished from last summer. So I started knitting the lime skirt by Le Pull. I'm using Drops Muskat for this. Which is a mercerized cotton, 100% cotton by Drops. And this is the shade 51. I believe it's like, the name must be a variation on orange. I started knitting the lime skirt as sort of a bright summery piece. It's like an all over, sort of almost like a crochet stitch or like a net stitch, but that you do through knitting. And it sort of features a stockinette fold over waistband with a pearl row that sort of helps you fold it over. And I did that over just like a white elastic. And I started knitting this around last summer, towards the end of the summer. In fact, I think I actually started knitting it in September last year. So knowing that I probably wouldn't finish it and get to wear it before the end of the summer. I'm conflicted with this one. I'd love to finish it, but I did make a few mistakes. I don't know if I'm going to be able to spot it. Yeah, there we go. So there's definitely a couple of rows where I made some mistakes. And then sort of the problem with this stitch that I found is that I could not figure out how to sort of ladder down and fix it. I usually can with most stitch patterns, but this one was fairly complex in that whatever I was doing, I just couldn't figure it out. So I don't know, I have a few mistakes here. In fact, actually just really concentrated on this one area, but I know there's some other places. I think what I'll do is I'll try it on and sort of reevaluate whether I want to keep knitting it. I have most of it done, but yeah, I would just need to finish maybe another 20 centimeters to sort of be happy with the length. I'm also aware, because it's cotton and because of just like the weight of it, it's probably going to stretch lengthwise. But yeah, I think I just need to figure out how much I hate the mistakes that are in it. Carrie. Because the net stitch is quite distinctive, I think it's actually going to make quite a bit of a difference whether it sort of looks uniform and correct across the whole skirt. That pattern is knit in a sport weight, so if you were to knit it yourself, I guess a sport would work. I kind of struggle to find a sport weight generally in most yarns and most summer yarns. I'm using the muskat, which I believe is categorized as a DK. I always find with cottons, they say they're a really big weight, but then actually when you look at them, they seem quite thin. So I figured that this one would be fine. And because it's quite airy, I'm not 100% that sticking to that one weight is essential. Now, the second pattern that I wanted to talk about is also a lapel pattern, or I think she's lapel on Instagram, maybe. I think she's just very good at summer knitting patterns. She always makes me sort of excited for knitting for summer. They're always like very distinctive, very bright, very colorful, very fun. So I generally look to her when I'm looking for ideas for knitting in the summer. And so the second pattern that I'm really interested by is the Nina Top 2. So there is one Nina top, but I think this is the second edition that she released. It's an older pattern, but yeah, I just really think the shape across the shoulder is really distinctive and, you know, would make for like a great, just like barely there kind of top to wear in the summer that, can be fun with all of the different color combinations that you can add to it. For myself, I think I'd envisage knitting it maybe in a quite thick stripe, white, and maybe like a strong green, like maybe not a bright green, but still having a bit of darkness to it. I do have some options here with me. So I bought some drops Belle in the color, I think this is off-white last year. And I figured that I could use this. This is a DK weight and the pattern does also say sport. So same as the last one, but I think I can get away with the DK. I was thinking of using this mixed with another yarn to make sort of thick stripes. So this was the only sort of bright green that I had in my stash that I wanted to, that I thought about pairing with it. And I think these two together could make for some quite good stripes. I also thought about maybe a red color, so white and red together. Again, like really quite thick stripes, thicker than the ones shown in the product photo. I think is sort of a trend that we're seeing. I think that would look really cute in a little top. And I love the asymmetric detail over the shoulder. If you look at the project photos on Ravelry for this top, there's some really gorgeous back detailing that I don't think is so obvious from the actual pattern page on Ravelry. I just think it'll be a quick knit as well because there's basically barely any fabric that you're knitting to. Wow, the heron is back. That is so cool, Mr. Heron. A final pattern by Lapel that I think would be great for summer is the orange trousers. So these are actually quite similar patterns with the lime skirt, and it's quite funny because I wanted to knit the lime skirt in orange and then now the orange trousers in a color that's not orange. I had mostly ignored this pattern for a while. Mostly because, I don't know, I just didn't find that I reach for beach cover-up type garments in the summer. I think if I'm going to be wearing stuff when it's hot, then I'm mostly going to be wearing maybe a dress or something like that. And I just couldn't really picture it in a way that I would style it in the colors that I'd seen on the project pages. But then I watched a YouTube video by, I think her name is Eliza OK, maybe? I'll pop up her picture here. And she was doing sort of a walkthrough on her Ravelry queue and some things that she wanted to knit in the near future. And what I really liked about it is that it was kind of plugged into her sort of fashion design taste, and she was matching patterns to things that she'd seen by designers that she'd liked that she actually wanted to buy or put into her wardrobe. So I think that that's always the most successful way to knit for me, is when I see something that I like by a designer that's really aspirational, and then I try and sort of recreate something in my own wardrobe that matches with that aesthetic. I think is better, I guess, than knitting, the new patterns that come out every summer or every winter, and knitting them just because you see them on your feed a lot. I think it's a more natural way to do it the other way around. And in Eliza's video, she mentioned exactly these orange trousers, but in the context of, I actually don't know who she is, Ava Chen. There was a video of her sort of running down the street looking all great with these black open work sort of lace trousers with a big black sweater over the top. I really liked that vision. I liked the idea of wearing it more in the winter. So actually I framed this as a summer knitting pattern, but maybe this is actually something that I'd wear more in the autumn. That's what I was envisaging for this pattern was these sort of like black mesh trousers that then I could maybe style with biker shorts underneath, maybe some trainers, maybe a big, you know, jumper over the top. If it's really cold, maybe a coat over the top, and just have that layering element with the trousers. I think that's something actually I've seen quite a bit in fast fashion or in like the trends coming in, and I think it would be interesting to sort of do it in a much slower way. The only problem is that I don't actually have any sort of black summer appropriate yarns. I wouldn't want to do it with a wool, especially, you know, if you're sitting down in it, anything with trousers, I find that, you know, that would lead to pilling quite quickly. So I wanted to do it in a very durable, maybe even like a polyester yarn. I do have one thing in my stash. So this is, what is this? It's ripped. I thrifted this. This is Lang Yarn's Amalfi, which is 70% cotton and then 30% polyamide, which actually seems like a sort of perfect match for what I'm envisaging. I don't know what the weight of this is. I don't know. The pattern says a sport. I'm sure this could pass for a sport. The only problem is that I only have this one ball, and I have a feeling that this is discontinued. So let's see. Does it say the meterage on here? Oh yeah, there. Okay, so meterage is 50 grams for 90 meters. So I don't have a lot here. I definitely wouldn't have enough for the trousers. And then I was thinking about things that I had in stash. I don't necessarily want to bring in new yarns this summer because I do actually have quite a few summer yarns to get through that I bought last time. And I was thinking about my stash, and then I remembered that I'd thrifted as well loads of this Lang Mikonos. Now, the color isn't right, and it's also not a color that I like, and I'd already envisaged sort of using this to knit something and then maybe over dyeing it later on. But yeah, sorry, this is an 81% viscose, 19% linen. I think it's classified as a worsted. This is also discontinued, but you know, worsted, but again, very, very thin. And it has this sort of like net texture and then with some like lumps in between it. It's quite interesting. So yeah, I think this could be a good match for that pattern. I have loads of this, so I think that could definitely work. And so I could knit it in the pink and then over dye it. Yeah, I think that's the easiest. I could also hang it up and then over dye it that way, but I think that would be too much of a faff, and I might as well just knit it to begin with and get the fun part out of the way. I'm not very experienced in over dyeing. I really wanted to acquire some acid dyes. I would love to sort of dip my toe into you know, indie dyeing or hand dyeing yarns. I'm really interested in that, but I found finding good acid dyes where I am in Ireland has been quite difficult. So yeah, I will look into that. If I can't do that, then maybe I will try just using a commercial, like a RIT dye, because I'm going for black. I can't imagine that it would be that difficult. But then again, this is quite a complex fiber. So it's viscose and linen, two different fibers. I haven't seen whether maybe I would need a like non-natural RIT dye bath for that. But yeah, that is one of my ideas. Moving on to sort of a more experimental idea that I have for the summer. This is something that I've had in the back of my mind for a while. It was reinvigorated when I was looking at Julia Dang's Instagram. She's mostly a fashion blogger, actually not really related to the knitting world at all. And she was part of the lineup on YouTube who split up and then recently have come back together. So that's super exciting. Yeah, there's a couple of Instagram shots where she's knitted her own sort of pieces, and they're very like open work, lacy, you know, irregular sort of stitch sizes with integrated drop stitches. That's the vibe. And she's knitted 3 of them. I think there's like, you know, a red piece, a white piece, and then like a black one, or like a sort of army green black one. And she's knitted them all on the Centro knitting machine, which I think is really quite interesting. I was super inspired by those pieces. Also, what she seems to do is that she knits panels and then on a mannequin sort of places the panels and sort of, you know, manipulates them in ways that, and sort of tries out different orientations of ways to put them together, which I think is a very like high fashion way to do it rather than, you know, just following a pattern from beginning to end. And yeah, I quite like the idea of this as a layering piece. I would love ideally to knit 2 of these, maybe mixing in different fibers as well. That's kind of the vision that I had in my head. So first of all as well, I need to tell you about sort of the construction or the idea of it. I think I'm envisaging this a bit like the aura top actually. So a long sleeved, kind of loose, open work, pullover, or, you know, almost like a long sleeve t-shirt. Maybe there's asymmetric on one side, features drop stitches, maybe even some lace stitches, depending on, you know, some more like interesting looking stitches that I could integrate in there. I think this is a trend as well that we've been seeing. If you've hate scrolled, you know, the Zara website at any point, then you've seen like these sort of open work distressed sweaters. I think that's a nice look for the summer that you can layer on top of other pieces. So yeah, I would love to knit one in black, maybe featuring lots of different yarns. I was thinking maybe like, you know, a lace weight kid silk mixed with something thicker, maybe like this lang yarns. Even like a super bulky yarn as well, and just sort of mixing up the textures and having it look quite organic. And then also for this summer, and the one that I think I'm the closest to knitting, is one in a sort of beige off-white color. So I have a couple of yarns here that I could definitely use for that. These are 2 that I've thrifted as well. You'll see a common theme is that I quite like to thrift a lot of yarns, especially summer yarns, and use them in more like experimental pieces like this, especially when you don't have like a full sweaters quantity. These are 2 really interesting ones. This is one that I got a while back. I have a couple of these. It's the Sirdar Rafaella, cotton rich fashion DK. So the composition is 51% cotton, 49% acrylic. And yeah, this one I feel like is less interesting. This one I only have 1 ball of, but I'm kind of obsessed with it. It's like, so it's by Cushendale, which is an Irish woolen mill that have a website that's still going. I don't think they sell this yarn anymore, but they do sell a couple of other like really interesting ones. There's like a boucle, like a mohair boucle that's super thick in some really gorgeous colors. And then they have a couple of others that I can't remember, but they're really expensive. So I haven't ordered from them. But this yarn is interesting. So it's 70% cotton, 30% linen. And then I imagine the linen is all of these little tufts that kind of go through the yarn. And it just feels like really scrunchy and cute. It is recommended for 4mm needles and it has 170 meters in it. So maybe like a sport DK. Yeah, and I think maybe something like these 2, maybe mixing in some thicker like white colored yarns or beige colored yarns. And then just creating something a bit intuitive and a bit open work. Maybe using this aura pattern as a base, using the numbers from that, I think could make for quite an interesting summer piece. Moving on to the next pattern or object that I'd like to knit for the summer. This is one that I've had the yarn for and the idea for a long time. And in fact, I can't actually credit myself for the idea. So this was something that Laura Penrose of Penrose Knits had started to knit a long time ago. So I think it was supposed to be the like a new edition of the sibling sweater, my size, so the adult size, but she was going to do it as a t-shirt for the summer, and she started knitting it on holiday. Something didn't work out with the neck, and then she never continued with the design. But the yarn that she used and the whole idea really captivated me. And I think at the time I was already making a knitting for Olive order, and so I just added the yarn to sort of complete it. So she had envisaged knitting this t-shirt in a fingering weight in the Knitting for Olive pure silk. And she'd also wanted to go for like a low contrast stripe, and these were the exact colors that she chose, I believe. So this is, I think this one's lamb's ear. No, it's the other way around. This one is lamb's ears, and this one is powder. Yeah, and they're both the Knitting for Olive pure silk. It's a fiber that, you know, I've wanted to try for a really long time. A lot of people have talked about it. It's what they call like a cruelty-free raw silk. So definitely is maybe coarser than a regular silk fiber, but I just think it's just really interesting. I'm so intrigued to see what it would be like in a garment. And yeah, I just got really captivated with this sort of low contrast stripe idea. But I don't have a pattern to base myself off. I don't think she's going to continue with the design. What was also super interesting about the idea that she was talking about in her video was that on the sibling sweater, there's this really interesting stripe detail along the back, pick up along the shoulder. So it's a drop shoulder. And then you pick up the stripes and sort of knit. So it kind of creates like the stripes, they butt up like this and they look super visually interesting. If you've seen on the sibling sweater, that's what it looks like. And she was recreating that again in a fingering weight on a t-shirt. And so then I sort of had a look for t-shirts or like fingering weight patterns that are drop shoulder. But hello, hi, I'm talking, and so you want to get involved, yeah? I didn't really fully mind then if the pattern was a fingering weight t-shirt or, a long sleeve sweater or something like that. I think I just kind of wanted the numbers for a drop shoulder. Bye. And then figured I could sort of recreate that detailing with the perpendicular stripes that butt against each other by sort of, messing with the pattern that way. I did also think about, there's the T number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, which isn't quite the same construction as the sibling sweater, but it does have these sort of panels along the back, which I imagine if you did in a stripe would sort of create a very similar effect. So I think that's one option. That's done in fingering weight, or I think it's like a fingering weight plus a cashmere lace or something, but I think you could probably modify it for a fingering weight. Or alternatively, I don't know, I think maybe I need to do another Ravelry deep dive. Or I could just try and self-draft based off maybe the numbers for the sibling sweater, or maybe a pattern that I already own. I don't know. This is sort of the one that I'm thinking of knitting on the majority of whilst I'm driving down to France, because I think, it's a lot of stitches, it's a lot of really slow knitting. We're going to be driving for a long, long time. This is a potential. Maybe I could try and draft something myself before we go. Another one that I actually don't have in my internal Ravelry queue. I haven't had in there for that long, but this is a recent release, or in fact the pattern isn't even released yet. It's Tiffany Lou's typical Thursday top, which is kind of like a waistcoat. I think it like really mirrors a lot of the knitted waistcoats that we've seen last summer and this summer. I know Mango did a good one that was it was like in like a brown knitted one, and I'd seen on a couple of influencers. So yeah, I think this is like a no-brainer as an addition for a summer knitting pattern, and also something you could maybe layer over a t-shirt. But the Thursday top hasn't been released yet. I've been following it. I've got the yarn ready, so I plan to knit this in the Knitting for Olive cotton merino in ochre brown. So the cotton merino is 70% cotton and then 30% merino. It's touted by a lot of people as being like the perfect summer yarn. And I've never knitted it with it before, but I don't know, I'm hoping they might be right. It's very squishy. People have said it kind of feels like almost like balmy, and I can definitely get where they're coming from there. And yeah, I think this color is gorgeous. I ordered this actually when they had their when they were out of stock of all of the cotton merino and before they restocked. And this was one of the very few colors that was available on the website, but I actually think it's probably one of the better colors. And I think that, yeah, it was probably a good thing to sort of have that restriction of choice, so I didn't have to panic over all of the different colors that they offer. So yeah, I would love to knit the Thursday top in this. The only issue though is that the suggested yarn is the Retrosaria Rosa, I can never say this, Retrosaria Rosa Pomar. which is a heavy fingering weight. In fact, I think it almost leans into a sport. It's quite dense. Whereas all of the Knitting for Olive fingering weights are really quite thin. So I think she's getting like maybe 22 stitches, maybe even closer to 20 stitches on her Thursday top. And I think I would be achieving maybe 24. So I might have to do some pattern magic to try and figure out a way to sort of make the size that I want to make, but I do think that this is sort of the best match that I have. Next thing that I would love to knit this summer is actually a reknit. So I've knit this in the past. It's the Soul Top by Rose Knitwear. I think this came out last year. I loved this pattern. The detailing on it is just super gorgeous. I love that really thick neckline. I don't really love like a really dainty strap, so I think this is perfect. And I knit this last year in this blue color. I don't know whether this is the front or the back, I'm not sure. But yeah, it was almost like a test knit, like me testing myself knitting it, because I knit it in a yarn that I guess I'm not like 100% in love with, but I really liked the color and I just kind of wanted to try it. This is the Drops Cotton Light, and it's a mix of cotton and nylon, polyamide, polyester, some version of plastic. And I don't love knitting with synthetic fibers, so I wasn't 100% sure with this one. And actually, if you look at it, it's bobbled quite a bit, which actually may be more the cotton than the polyester. But I knew that going in because I'd read some of the reviews, and also I haven't worn it that much, so it has really bobbled quite quickly. But yeah, I liked the color. I just kind of wanted to try it out. It was a good thing that I did, because I think the sizing on that pattern size is quite big, and I actually ended up, so I basically knit a size too big, and I ended up doing some magic where I seamed up the sides on both sides and took out some of the fabric. And it's fairly invisible on the outside, so I did sort of the traditional seaming method. But what I didn't do is then cut any of that excess fabric off, because I was a bit worried about it unraveling, because it's a cotton acrylic and it doesn't have any sort of natural fiber to stick to. So I do have these like sort of odd flaps which are sort of coming out from the side of this top, but it doesn't really bother me too much, and I do have something wearable out of it, which I'm happy with. I did also do that before I picked up, or however the pattern works, I can't quite remember, before I did the sleeve stitches, because if I didn't, it would have been really, really bulky under the armpit, so I'm glad that I did that before, and I realized that the size was way too big. And yeah, I would love to reknit this again this summer. I think it's just a great summer top. Like, it almost acts like a tank top, or it is a tank top, but you know, like a ready to wear tank top. And I do have some yarns ready to knit it in that I bought last year. So the Soul Top is knit in a DK, or a combination of two different fingerings held together. For something that I knew that I wanted to knit several times, I wanted to find a different option, and the best that I could come up with at the time was the Drops Safran. So this is what I have here. I have 4 colors, and yeah, these were the 4 colors that I went for that were the most sort of visually interesting to me. I didn't necessarily think about how they would mix together, but I think I've kind of landed at maybe I want to do these sort of low contrast browns together, as just sort of like a very usable brown tank top, and then maybe these two together as sort of like a more punchy addition. I did try every combination. I did these together. That's quite nice. I did these together, and then I also mixed in some other yarns that I have that were fingering weight to see if I could find something. I'll put a photo here. I do have this like big swatch that I made where, you know, I was testing out all of the different colors together, but I couldn't really find anything where I was like, yes, that is the thing that I want to do. But I do want to get these yarns out of stash, so I will probably just make a decision and go with it. The great thing about the Soul Top is that it's a really quick knit. You're really just, I think it's bottom up, so you just start and you're just, you know, knitting a big sort of round thing. And then you do all of the finishing touches at the end. So it comes together super, super quickly. And a fun anecdote about the original sole top that I made was that I cast it on before going to the cinema last year. Started working on it in the cinema after having cast on like the first row. Didn't realize in the dark that I'd twisted my stitch, or not twisted my stitch. You knit in the round and you do it the wrong way in the round. And I'd basically created a Mobius strip, and I'd knit in the cinema maybe about this much, and I was really annoyed when that came out because I was like, this is unusable. I have to start again. We are getting into the nice to haves, or things that I might knit if I have the time before the summer is over and before I lose the motivation on summer knitting, or maybe that I'll just think about until next year rolls around. So the first one is the Sienna bag by Petite Knit. I loved this when it came out. It's really cute. I think it's one of her better summer bags, and I feel like every one of these that she releases I kind of get drawn in. I don't have the yarn ready. It's actually, I've tried to buy it. The suggested yarn is the isager Japanese bomuld, or like the cotton, the Japanese cotton, and I've tried to buy it in a couple of different places, but I can't seem to get my hands on it. It seems to be sold out, probably because of this pattern. And yeah, I would love to pick that up in the black. I think maybe a black little bag like that would have a great space in my wardrobe. I'd love to do like the black leather finishings as well. I think that might actually be easier to find in better quality than like a brown, something that, you know, matches well with your yarn. I think black is just easiest. And yeah, I'd love to attempt that. I saw that Marlene Knits was knitting it, and it doesn't seem super complicated, maybe a bit hard on the hands. Then another pattern that I'd like to adapt, or sort of, you know, finesse my way around, is knitting something that I actually talked about in my last podcast. I would love to knit a garter stitch wrap cardigan. So the idea that I have currently is the cotton merino by Drops. I was saying on my podcast that I was absolutely influenced by a baby. So my niece has this really gorgeous garter stitch baby cardigan that's, you know, I think it's probably from H&M or something like that. She had a sort of tiny newborn size garter stitch baby cardigan, one of the ones that, you know, has sort of the triangles that are overlapping rather than sort of ending on a trapezoid or something like that, but definitely sort of the triangles that come up. And one of the features of it as well, that is, I think it was like all I-cord all the way around, all of the finishings. It's definitely something that I can figure out on my own. I have a couple of wrap cardigan patterns already. So I already own the Levitate wrap cardigan, and I've knit that before. And I have Spectacle Strix Puff and Go wrapper. There is also, so Woollen Beyond has the big burrito cardigan, which is an obvious option if you're thinking of sort of a garter stitch wrap cardigan. But the problem with that one is that it seems to be a circular yoke, and I think that's not really what I'd be looking for. I think I'm looking more for a drop shoulder, or maybe even a saddle shoulder, I think would be quite good. There is also, I don't own it, but I think that, I think that Handmade by Florence has a wrap cardigan that is pretty much the gauge and the shape that I'm going for. So I think maybe that's something that I could adapt to have garter stitch. Using this yarn. I'm really intrigued to use this yarn. I think it's like the perfect color. And yeah, I'm interested to see how it performs. In comparison to the Knitting for Olive cotton merino, this actually has more cotton and this has more merino. But it is superwash merino, and I'm not a massive fan of superwash. So we'll see. They both have that kind of balmy quality. And then this one feels softer and maybe bouncier, but then this one's also a fingering weight and this one's a DK, so different yarns. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see what that looks like, and I do actually think it'll be quite a nice piece for the summer. because I rarely get away with not wearing something with sleeves. And then finally, another jumper for another summer knit. Makes loads of sense, but I guess makes sense in my wardrobe. I would love to knit the clematis sweater by Emma's Knits. I love this thing. This is, I feel like this pattern is something that existed in my brain, and I really, really wanted to try it out because it kind of works as a dupe of the Jacquemus or Jacquemus. I actually don't know how to pronounce that. The Jacquemus asymmetrical cardigan. I was like, oh, I'd really love to try and sort of design that pattern, but was very new to knitting at the time and didn't have the confidence to try. I'd also envisaged it in a fingering weight, so I was like, man, I'm not going to start designing in a fingering weight. But then Emma came out with this pattern and I was like, oh my God, she did the work for us. It's amazing. So I've been meaning to knit this for forever. And yeah, it's worsted weight, or I think it says like on the pattern page, it's DK plus a lace equals DK. But to me, that equals a worsted weight. Probably a bit heavier with the mohair included than most people would consider a summer pattern. But I think because it's maybe closer fitting, you know, maybe less of a sort of heavy style of jumper. And also because you can sort of open it up and really only wear it like the top couple of buttons done up. I think that it definitely works as a layering piece for summer in an Irish summer. And also the yarn that I'd love to knit it in is more of a summer fiber. So I would love to knit this in. I actually have the charity shop sticker on top of it. I would love to knit this in the We Are Knitters, the mixed yarn. Again, it's another cotton wool mix. So 50% cotton, 50% wool. I guess I like that they're all natural fibers. And I was very, very lucky that I managed to pick up 4 balls of these in the charity shop for €1 each. These are like €17 a ball on the We Are Knitters website. So yeah, I was super lucky with that. And yeah, this is the 01 color, or the color natural it's called. And it just feels really nice, I think. So we've got our 3 cotton wool mixes here. I genuinely think this one feels the nicest. It's a DK, so could work, and I'd love to mix it with sysleriget lace mohair. Their silk mohair, I think in the color Mrs. Potts, would be a really nice combination with this white yarn, and just have the mohair do all of the color talking. Emma's Knits, so 2 of her samples are in a sort of pale white color, and one of them is white plus a mohair that's speckled, and I think that's the one that's really grabbed me. I've also just been in love with the Mrs. Potts colorway for a while, so yeah, I think that's definitely on the cards. If it's not on the cards for this summer, you know, I just keep holding off on buying the sysleriget mohair, just because it's like, it's not the most expensive of hand-dyed mohairs, but I really struggle to spend that much money on, you know, just one set of yarns. So if I make that purchase, if I treat myself at any point, then maybe I'll get to knitting this, or maybe this will be, you know, a spring 2025 knit. But yeah, I think it was worth mentioning, especially given my great bargain yarn score that I'm very happy with. And before we wrap up, some honorable mentions, things that I probably won't get around to knitting this summer, but that I would, that I have in the back of my head. You know, they're in my favorites on Ravelry, and I think are just really interesting patterns. The first one is the shizen top. I was doing a, you know, midnight Ravelry deep dive, and I came across this one. It seems to be knit out of a lace weight, so maybe something like a lace weight mohair, or maybe a lace weight silk would be super, super lovely. And it's just like a really breezy open gauge top. I think it would be great for layering. I think it would be good to sort of throw over a bikini as well, especially in like a lighter or a really, really dark color. And yeah, I just think it's a great honorable mention. This one is the Milky Way Bustier by Thing with 2 N's. I love this designer. I've seen a couple of their patterns pop up on Instagram. They're always really, really interesting, very intricate, and just sort of different from the norm. And I think, you know, she does really interesting things with sort of combining different yarns together. This particular one seems to be focusing more on like the color play. It's definitely like, you know, it's giving sort of Chanel tweed. It's giving like a bit of the crochet summer top trend. And yeah, just in the color combination that she's done here, it looks super interesting. It's definitely more of a focus knit, maybe not something that you can kind of knit away at mindlessly at the beach or something like that. And I think this is definitely something that you could pull from stash. It's a mix of 2 fingering weight, or I think it says light fingering weight yarns. So even if you had leftovers from even like knitting for Olive, I don't know how much it calls for in the pattern, but if you had, you know, a fair few leftovers, that would make a really good sample or a really good way to sort of use up your stash. And yeah, I just really love the contrast on this one, and I think it would be a great tank top for the summer. So, editing Nadia here, and the dog that keeps interrupting me throughout this entire video. Yeah, I just wanted to add one final pattern that I completely forgot to add, but I would love to knit if I have time this summer. The Wave Vest by Rose Knitwear, I think it's like so impressive looking. I think it would look like really good just over a t-shirt, maybe with some tailored trousers, or even like tailored shorts would be cute. Like a brogue or something if you're going to the office. I think it would be a really good one. And yeah, definitely a more concentrated knit that requires some more concentration, which could be good, you know, for knitting on the beach if you were so lucky as to be on the beach this summer. And yeah, I think Rose Knitwear released a this is very distracting, like another set of photos where she was styling it with kind of like exactly the outfit that I'm mentioning it, and it just 100% convinced me to knit it. I think it's knit in 2 strands of DK. I would probably knit it in the recommended colors, like the white and the navy, because I just think it's so classic. But you could also do it in like a white and a red would be cute. And yeah, I think like on the pattern it says that it's inspired by hokusai. Who doesn't love a bit of hokusai? So yeah, I think that's a final addition to the pattern roundup. Yeah. And then that wraps up everything that I'm thinking about for the summer. I definitely don't think I will get through all of these. Let's call this an aspirational video, but hopefully it will inspire some of you to knit some of these patterns, or not all of them are patterns, some of these ideas. I will check in, I guess, on this channel on how I do with all of these. I definitely think the ones that I'll be taking with me for France would be the striped t-shirt, the typical Thursday top in both of the Knitting for Olive yarns, and then what else? Maybe a sole top to keep it interesting. Yeah, I also think that taking these sort of more fingering weight, longer term projects away on holiday would be a good one, because it'll save on space. And you know, if I'm limited to the yarns that I have, then maybe it means that I will finish something that's longer term. We'll see. But yeah, that was everything that I had to show you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to complain to me about how your UK/European/Irish summer is going, please do, because I will commiserate. If you'd like to complain about how hot your summer is, please go elsewhere, because I don't want to hear it. No, I'm kidding. Let me know how your summer's going, and how much you promised yourself that you'd knit but then didn't get around to. I would love to hear about it. Thank you so much, and have a lovely week. Bye.